Hello, and welcome to second edition of Education is Best Medicine. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you. I want to say hello to my Facebook family and all the good things that are going on. I want to say hello to Edie Akamoto. Edie, I'll be calling you pretty soon. We're going to make this happen. I also want to say a special thank you to Dr. Michael Lenore and the Black.org collaboration we're having. Kind of wanted to start today, and again, I want to give a great shout out to Miss Barbara Howard and her well-deserved break. She just finished some training as a peer counselor, and I just, as I thought about it, I wanted to let people know that these kinds of opportunities are out there for those that want to do the work and do the study and take do the training. I think it was like a year training where she had to take a test. I think it was 120 questions over an hour. So glad she passed it and moving forward. So what's a peer counselor? Peer counselor is a individual. Peer counselors use their own lived experiences to connect with and support others. And the reason why I bring this because we're in an era of mental health and mental challenges, and we need to be supportive. And people that have a lived experience around a number of things, addiction, trauma, can help us live a better life. So peer counselors use their lived experience to connect with and support others. That can include experiences with mental health issues, substance use disorders, trauma, or significant changes. Training. While they are not professional therapists, peer counselors often receive training, and I must say it was really rigorous over a year or so period that she did this training before taking the test. Receiving training, active listening, providing emotional support, and offering practical advice. The training helps them be more effective and assist others in navigating the difficulties. And you're going to be seeing more of these professionals come up as a part of the healthcare team, in which their expertise is critical in understanding the pathophysiology of an individual and what is a disease triggers and those kinds of things. Recovery and empowerment. The goal of peer counseling is to foster hope and support recovery and empower individuals to make control of their lives. Peer counselors often work in various settings, including schools, community centers, and healthcare facilities. She's currently working with NAMI, and the discussion, the fact that training was triggered by that. Again, I think it's going to be great for her to come talk about this. Certification. Some regions, peer counselors can become certified through specific training programs, which she did in the exam. Certification can enhance their ability to provide effective support and may be required for certain positions. That's what this is. So again, we're looking at different kind of health professionals, health and mental health, and advocates for individuals. And of course, this can be valuable to complement professional mental health services, which is, look at talking about healthcare teams, about attack teams that, it may have a provider, it may have a behavioral health therapist or peer counselor like Ms. Howard, and EMT to assess people in the field. And maybe this is the option to calling ER, and the personnel that are being pulled away from something that may not need that kind of expertise. Again, I'd like to welcome everybody to Education is Best Medicine, and thank Believe Radio and Curtis, always on the point for me in terms of assisting. You can see the shows on YouTube, put in Education is the Best Medicine, and it pops up. So, if you're around and not doing anything and maybe want to hear a conversation that might be interesting, hey, please tune me up. And the second part of the discussion, because I have a couple of multiple discussions, I have been in medicine for almost 35 years, 40 years, and the individuals that got me into medicine were two gay men, one a physician, one a nurse. And If not for them, I do not pursue this healthcare career, and for that, I'm very thankful, and for that, I'm really, really um, honored. And we're going to talk about that discussion also today. Um, but what came to mind to me was over this last period of how do we define Black? And I think that that's important because in a so-called non-race-based society that prides itself on the individual, race continues to come up, and race is a social construct, which means it's a way of defining people and categorizing people without really any science involved. And so this is like GPT chat and, you know, a lot of the resources that I tend to collect and review, and just kind of brought to mind. It says that black is defined as a color that results from absence or complete absorption of visible light. It is considered an aromatic color, meaning it lacks hue, similar to white and gray. In physics, black is perceived when no light reaches the eye or when all wavelengths of light are absorbed, black hole. Symbolically, black often represents darkness, elegance, or authority. Black people as authoritative, huh? That's kind of interesting. So I like to understand definitions, because when I understand definitions, it makes me kind of ask, why are we asking this question about a Black woman's color? Why are we asking about color in general, or gender in general? And how are we making those decisions as a society and a community? So and so I also asked, how is Black as it relates to race in America? And I got a really interesting answer from GPT chat, and I'm trying to synthesize it, but it's really interesting. It says, in the context of race in America, Black typically refers to individuals who identify as part of African American community. This group primarily consists of descendants of enslaved Africans brought to the United States, but it also includes immigrants from Africa, the Caribbean, and other regions. The Black population in the U.S. is diverse and has grown significantly over years. As of 2022, there were approximately 47.9 million people in the U.S. who identify as Black, making up about 14.4% of the country's population. The group includes those who identify as Black alone or in combination with other racial backgrounds, as well as Black Hispanics. Black Americans have historically faced Black Americans. And the distinction has to be African American, because I think that the term Black, like I say on the job applications, is / African American. And it's the homogenization of a community, of a group, of their trauma. And it says, and I'll say, Black Americans, African Americans have historically faced significant challenges, including systemic racism, discrimination, and economic inequality. Despite these obstacles, the community has made substantial contributions to American culture, politics, and society. I would agree there. However, there always a however, right? Many Black Americans continue to advocate for systemic changes to address the ongoing issues of racial inequality and injustice. So why did I bring this up? I said I brought this up because Black, the word, has become synonymous with people of color in America. But as you can see, the definition is different, and I want to point out Dr. Thelma Gluck. She's a chancellor at Peralta College Community District, who in a recent Post article 20, in 2024, September 2024, very recently recognized that throughout the college is a Black serving institution. And the call to action for SB 11348. And she makes mention of the incredible diversity of the East Bay, including Berkeley City College, College of Alameda, Atlantic College, and the American College. She also notes that 30% of the students identify as Latina X, a Latin X. All four colleges are either designated Hispanic serving institutions of the path to designation. Remember the definition though. The definition for Black is African descendant of 1619. So you have to include that in the definition. So the first people that should be at the table are African Americans. But if they're not, that's okay. They should be included. I'll be fine with that. And as she notes that they also identify as Asian, American, Pacific Islanders, but that's not the definition. So this is one way you start to co-opt the trauma of one group to co-opt another for benefit. And I would challenge the Ms. Guklan to come on program and tell us about why she doesn't think that's true. Because we're not a melting pot. And we haven't been community oriented. And there's been a lot of friction in communities. Because, again, it gets back to our recent holiday of Columbus. Columbus discovered nothing. He came here and Native Americans were already here. A way you co-opt the history. And so that's what I think about when I think about Black. And so, again, my discussion around African Americans, we didn't immigrate, we were brought here. That's a very different pathway that we rode to. And I had a discussion with a medical director about him becoming a physician and me becoming a PA. And I said we had very different pathways because he was a white male, blonde, blue-eyed. And he didn't want to adjust to the fact that my path toward becoming a clinician was different than his path. That's when you want to disassociate yourself from the trauma. Well, the reason why he didn't become a physician is because of the fact that he didn't work hard enough. Again, you'll have this conversation. We talk about the layer continues to be institutional and structural racism. So, and I always say that if you have a family and home to go to, and you can maintain your language, you can maintain and go back and see your grandmother centuries back, or in knowledge of her, then you have an intact family structure. We did not, the African Americans, the Blacks in 1619 did not have that. And that's why we have a woke society now. It's undistinguishable, can't distinguish it. But I tell you, she did note that it was here that 60 years ago that the Black Panther Party was founded, a pivotal moment in the history of national history of social justice and equality, equity movements. I don't think so. Give me civil rights. Give me Reconstruction. Give me post the end of slavery and the Civil War. That's where the transitions happen. Give me the amending of the Constitution that still says African Americans are 3/5 of a human being. That's the part that kind of bothers me. So I think that this has to be a real structural context about how we use these words and what they mean, because they mean different things to different people. And if you look at the historical context, it definitely alters your view of that. Because culturally, I don't see Hispanics and Asians saying they're black. They'll say they're a person of color, but they don't say that they're black. Just the plain truth. So I'm at a point in my career where I'm 69, so I have to be truthful. Anyway. So that's where I would start this conversation, not with the Black Panthers. Because the Black Panthers were the residual of that fight from 1619 on. Know your history or you're doomed to repeat, because that's what's going on right now. It's a revisionist thought of history, how we revise and alter history to fit our norm, the dominant culture's norm, because it does not reflect to them in a positive light. So anytime rich people get together to say that we need to be going in a direction, you better watch it, because that's a benefit to them. It's never a benefit to that poor common person like me, or you, or blue collars. Nah. Anyway, like they say, I ain't rich. No doubt about it. So I just kind of question the chancellor's discussion and how she starts history, because you can start history anywhere, but the issue is, does that history reflect the true reality of what's happened? And love Cesar Chavez, Martin Luther King. Cesar Chavez was a lion. He was an absolute community lion, no doubt about it. But that's what I think. And so I think, again, our history is homogenized, and the slave experience and the brutality of the experiences and the sexualization of it also is homogenized, and but thereby minimizing it. Yeah, these, again, Black is diverse. Black as African American means descendant of slavery, not immigrating to the country, not able to go back to your home or leave your home because things that you like there aren't happening there. And I guess the other piece to this is housing. An article in Bayview, in the Bayview Black San Francisco, it says in San Francisco, Black San Franciscans matter. Of course they do. But again, the homogenization of the word Black. So in this case, it means those Black folks that lived in Hunters Point and through redevelopment were moved out of those areas systematically living in an area and told to uproot. No compensation. It was just a takeover. That's the historical context that we lived in terms of housing. That's why there's no housing. You can't, if you don't want to build it, you can't have it. If you don't want certain people living by you, you just zone yourself out of this. I have an interesting story, and then we're gonna keep it moving. So San Francisco put this act out, the San Francisco Replacement Housing Act, at 759 last year. It was the opportunity to allow emergency for developing long overdue housing for communities displaced during the redevelopment area. So understand that Black African Americans, not Asian Americans, not probably Native Americans, not Hispanic Americans, were systematically moved from their homes that they owned, so that the mayor could repurpose it to what they wanted, which was no housing. And so this plan came about, this proposal to enact it, but the the part of the community leads the leadership on this OCC committee too, Director Mr. Thor Kasloff, spelled KaslofySky, was thus unmoved by the popular idea of set-asides for African Americans that had been moved out of the area in the first place. And so what they want to do is give the developers free hand just to do what they want to do. Again, same system, same issue, same institutional structural issue affecting African Americans. And the reason I'm saying this because this has to be a distinction. Because it gets into why we don't want, or why there's a discussion around women leading. And we're going to talk about that. I want to say thank you for viewing, coming in, listening to this. I think it's so important. And basically, this Kapska guy wants to torpedo the whole agreement. So here you have a law put in place to address grievance and to find some grievance resolution to people that were moved off their homes, and it's a redevelopment issue, totally legal, totally inappropriate, and even the remedy is being fought by a person in place that believes that nothing happened to us as a community. So I think that is too unreal. Which gets me into, I asked the question, I said, what's this inferiority complex of men toward women? And then I asked, it says the vitriol and disconnect faced by women, particularly women of color in leadership positions in the union, is from a combination of systemic biases, historical power dynamics, and societal expectations. And here are some of the key issues. This is from a GPT chat and the AI family. Systemic racism and sexism. Women of color often face, and I'll say African American women born in America. I understand women of color, but the descendants of 1619 have been dealing with this since 1619 forward. Ask women in the right to have a child or not have a child. This is not anything new. This is we're here. We should understand what this means. What a certain part of America wants. So systemic, and why they can't acknowledge the fact that Kamala Harris should be the next president of the United States. It's just above them. How could you have a plantation slave woman be the president of the United States, telling all these white men what to do? It's going to happen. Systemic racism and sexism. Women of color often face both racial and gender discrimination, which can manifest itself in microaggressions, bias in hiring, promotion practices, and unequal pay. These systemic issues create additional barriers to their success and acceptance in leadership roles, and yet they still rise. And yet Kamala Harris, through all she had to deal with, is still positioned to be the president of the United States. What does that say about her leadership? Is her strength to be in this all-man club, and if you understand, I need to be in an all-white club sometime to have to deal like that. And they maintain her integrity. And what little things she would have done, she was a young woman anyway, finding her way in an all-male environment. You understand that? All male, all white, all old, all angry, that she would rise to the top, that she was voted in. She was voted in to her positions. Not the good old boys club. I believe that a number of African American physicians retired from practice because they weren't getting the respect that they should have gotten for their experience, for their knowledge, for their time in grade. Disrespectful. Stereotypes and biases. There is a persistent stereotype and bias about the capabilities and the roles of women and people of color and women and African American women. These biases can lead to questioning their authority, undermining their decisions, and subjecting them to higher scrutiny compared to white male counterparts. Kamala Harris. Do some interviews. Don't do some interviews. Speak to everybody. Don't speak to everybody. Go on Fox. Don't. Oh, come on. As you have a person say, I'm sick and I don't feel like I'm going to be campaigning anymore. Vote for me for president. Tired Trump. I thought we wanted different. The glass cliff phenomena. Women and people of color are often placed in leadership roles during times of crisis or when the likelihood of failure is high. Do you hear me? This sets them up for greater challenges and potential reinforcing negative stereotypes. Been my experience that when I walked in certain practices in community public health centers, I was always going to get the sickest patients, almost not compliant patients, the patients that no one else wanted. That's how I did understand mental health. Because a lot of my patients had mental health challenges, and once we addressed those mental health challenges, they did better. They were stable. Structural and institutional racism prevents you from treating people on an equal footing. That's the job. I can't decide who a gender or sex of a person is. I have to treat them. The number one killers of people are heart disease and cancer. So regardless of who they're sleeping with, they probably risk the issue of heart disease or cancer. Lack of support and mentorship. Women of color in leadership positions frequently lack access to the same networks, mentorship, and sponsorships, opportunities, a good old girl club, opportunities that are available to their white male peers. This can hinder their professional growth and be able to navigate the organizational politics. Isn't that something? Because you create an environment that you don't want anyone to be successful in and wonder why they're not successful. When you have to make a decision for your friend versus your colleague versus the person that's doing the right thing, you're always going to make it for the friend or the colleague. Cultural and organizational resistance. Many organizations have entrenched cultures that resist change and diversity. That is what's going on right now. The whole issue around against DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. Wow. What you're kidding. Diversity, equality, inclusion should be the roadmap for what we want. In this world full of females that I'm involved in, I want the women, the girls in my life to have access to all the things that I didn't have as an African American male, and that's a bunch. There should be no limits. We should be okay with a black female president. We should be okay with Pamela Price, who's doing her job, who can't give you 1,000 years for petty crimes, who can't exact a pound of flesh out of an individual because it gets overturned and puts that person in jail longer and at risk to sue because she's following the letter of the law. Again, higher standard. Again, no gimme, she's consistent, she's fair, she hasn't been involved in any dumb stuff. Come on, what is this recall about? Recall is personal, it's racist. Don't let it happen. Oh, vote. Please do vote. Get out there and vote. Ballots are down. Look at some of these folks, and I still got to do a little bit more homework for it, but I'm planning to get my ballot in this weekend. We got to get it done. Don't waste time. They're already setting up to say that the election was rigged. People that were voting were supposed to do the same thing they did last time, unsuccessful, and all the challenges, and it's even more so now. Fake electors, Project 2025. You won't have to vote again because he's going to be a king and a sick one too. Isn't that interesting? We have a standard that we hold a woman by that we don't hold a man by and call that equal. When it's a man, he's just keying around. When it's a woman, it's a marker for her character, who she is, and her personality, and all that stuff. You don't hear those things. It's like you're drinking the Kool-Aid. Jim Jones. Visibility and tokenism. Being one of the few women of color can lead to tokenism, where the presence is more symbolic than substantive. This can result in isolation, increased pressure to perform, and a lack of genuine inclusion. Well, you expect to be liked. You do expect to be respected. And understand the direction that she's trying to go isn't one that's trying to implode the country. So addressing these answers, requires promoting diversity and inclusion, providing equity, support, and some resources. Gotta have resources. Existing and challenging existing biases and stereotypes. It's a complex issue, but progress is being made through increased awareness or advocacy. I have to say that's true, but we got so far to go. This election should not be tied. If Barack Obama had committed half the things that Trump had, we kicked him out of office immediately. Wouldn't even be a contest. So I also asked about, the concept of inferiority complex between men and women in America is deeply rooted in historical, cultural, societal factors. Here are some key aspects. Historical context. Historically, women have been excluded from many areas of public life, including voting, education, and employment. These historical inequalities have long-lasting effects on perceptions of gender roles and capabilities. We can't go back. When I see these young men moving toward Trump, I see them wanting to go back. And the discussion around a control of a woman and what a woman can and can't do, given her power. Gender stereotypes. Societal expectations often dictate that men be strong, assertive, and dominant, while women should be nurturing, passive, and supportive. These stereotypes can lead to feelings of inadequacy when individuals do not conform to these roles. I have 4 girls. They can't be anything but strong and empathetic. And we have to allow them to do that. Workplace inequality. Women, particularly women of color, often face significant barriers in the workplace, including wage gaps, lack of representation in leadership positions, and discrimination. Media representation. The media often perpetuates gender stereotypes by portraying men and women in additional roles. This can reinforce, hey, look here, Housewives of Atlanta, a number of these series that are being produced, they show this strong black woman, but she's strong with a little edge, which is, makes it, I know the character exciting, but do you want to go home and sleep with that person? I don't know. Decisions are tough. I want my granddaughters to grow up in a world where they will be what they want to be and who they are without any limitations. Cultural norms and values play a significant role in shaping gender dynamics. In many cultures, traditional gender roles are deeply ingrained, making it challenging to achieve gender equality. Psychological impact. Constant exposure to gender bias and discrimination can lead to internalized feelings of inferiority. That's the problem. I don't want my girls to feel like they're inferior, and their self-esteem is challenged, and the mental health and overall well-being is challenged. And again, always the answer. Addressing these issues require a multifaceted approach, including education policy changes and cultural shifts. Promoting gender equality and challenging stereotypes can help reduce the inferiority complex and create a more inclusive society. I don't know about you, but it's going to be females are going to take care of us as we age. I'm seeing the young men do it, but not as much as the females, not as much as the daughters, the granddaughters, the nieces. And I think one of the discussions we have to have is the fear, particularly surrounding women of color, is the fear surrounding women, particularly women of color, African American women whose leadership positions of power often stem from several deep-seated societal and psychological factors. The loss of power and privilege. Some individuals feel that increasing diversity and inclusion in leadership will diminish their own power and privilege. This fear can lead to resistance and hostility towards women and people of color in leadership roles and women in general. Challenging status quo. Women in leadership positions often bring new perspective and challenge existing norms. We see it in the medical field. Folks say that female physicians are more empathetic, listen to them more, and provide better care than their male counterparts because they listen more. And medicine is, in part, management roles are being dominated by female physicians. Stereotypes and bias. Hey, you get the same kind of discussion, stereotypes, biases, exclusion, boys club. 1619 was a major white boys club. First 10 presidents decided that not only slavery was good, that we needed ingrained in the Constitution that says this particular group of people is 3/5 of a human being. I think that we have to be okay with not being okay, and push the limits. And again, challenge the status quo. Women in leadership positions often bring new perspectives and challenge existing norms. Stereotypes and biases. The fear that women, especially women of color, do not fit the traditional image of a leader. These biases can often lead to fear and doubts about competency and authority. Economic competition. In professional settings, there can be a fear of competition for jobs, promotions, and resources. This fear can be exacerbated by gender and racial biases, leading to discriminatory behaviors. The fear of the unknown. And that must say you never ever get promoted. You never ever move above people rocket past you. But you're as productive, better, ratings as good or better never happens. And people end up leaving. Fear of the unknown. People often feel they do not understand. A lack of exposure to diverse leadership can lead to misconceptions and unfounded fears about the capabilities and intentions of women and people of color in power. Now, like I said before, I was brought into medicine by a gay man and a physician with a nurse. And so this kind of got me. It says Bay Area teacher on leave after parents complain about gender material. And it says that a non-binary person, and that's a person whose gender identity does not fit with the traditional binary of male or female, a teacher in Cupertino has been placed on leave while the school district investigates complaints from parents that children were being taught material on gender that was not appropriate for their age. And we have to start deciding what that age is going to be, because people are different. Now, what's going on in America now is people don't want to accept people's differences. They just don't want to do it. It's obviously an issue around diversity, equity, and inclusion, of stereotypes and biases, about structural issues. And so, I mean, even the language changed. Lesbian, woman who's attracted to other women. Gay, a person who's attracted to the individual of the same gender, often used to describe men, but can be used by anyone. Bisexual, a person is attracted to more than one gender. Transgender, a person whose gender identity differs from the sex they were assigned at birth. Queer, an umbrella term for sexual and gender minorities who are not heterosexual or cisgender. That means heterosexual. It can also be a personal identity. Questioning, individuals who are exploring their sexual orientation or gender identity. Intersex, a person born with physical sex characteristics that do not fit typical definitions of male or female. Asexual, a person who experiences little or no sexual attraction to others. Pansexual, a person who is attracted to others regardless of their gender. Non-binary, a person whose gender identity does not fit within the traditional binary of male or female. Genderqueer, similar to non-binary, it describes a person who does not subscribe to conventional gender distinctions. Gender fluid, a person whose gender identity shifts over time. Agender, a person who does not identify with any gender. Two-spirited, a term used by some indigenous cultures for North American to describe a person who embodies both masculine and female qualities. So, before we complain, understand what and who we're talking about. And if they knew this person was non-binary, then doggone it, why'd you have them in school? Because you knew that they wasn't going to leave their sexuality at the door. Or were they supposed to leave their sexuality at the door? Well, should you have hired them in the first place? And gets into where does this end? Before it was African Americans, whites only. Irish need not apply. Jewish in Hitler's Germany. And so this gets into some backlash. And I'm dedicating the show to those two beautiful black men and let them know that, I hear it, And again, as a health professional, I can't refuse care to anyone. It would be against the law to be sued. I have to do the care that they need, because it's their choice. The backlash and climate of fear and minimization faced by LGBTQ and trans community in America has deep-seated historical roots. Historical context: discrimination against LGBTQ and individuals dates back to colonial era. Early American laws, influenced by Puritan norms, criminalized same-sex relationships and non-conforming gender behaviors. For example, in 1624, Richard Cornish was tried and hanged for sodomy in the Virginia colony. So not only was slavery going, it was like assault on LGBT community for sexual. Again, Puritan. Religious influence. Many American communities were founded on strict religious principles that condemned homosexuality and non-binary gender identities. These beliefs have persisted and continue to influence society attitudes and policies. Check them at the door. Medical and psychological pathologization. Through the 19th and 20th centuries, homosexuality and transgender identity were often pathologized by medical and psychological, meaning it was a disease process. Something's wrong with the person. Psychological communities. This led to harmful treatments and reinforced negative stereotypes. Sending boys that were maybe feminized to camps where it was bred out of them. And some of the kids were killed. Legal discrimination. Laws criminalize same-sex relationships and cross-dressing were common in the U.S. until relatively recently. The Stonewall riots in 1969 marked a significant turning point, sparking the modern LGBTQ plus rights movement. However, legal battles for equality, such as fight for marriage equality, continued for decades. So America has a long history of discrimination, sexism, cronyism. American is apple pie. Now, it gets to the question is, do we educate our children that there are differences, or do we wait for them to come into the house with their partner saying they're in love? Because by that time, it's a little too late. And if you don't accept them, then they're not probably going to be around. I think Dick Cheney really kind of, the vice president, his daughter is a lesbian, and he went to her and supported her, the hyper macho guy. Cultural and social stigma. Individuals who have been marginalized and stigmatized in the American society. The stigma is perpetuated by negative portrayals in media, discriminatory practices in the workplace, and exclusion from social institutions. You can't do that now. But if this administration is replaced by a Trump administration, all bets are off. He's going to purge. He wanted to purge. He's talking about purge. God, if you listen to this person, he is not joking. He is not joking, and he's not going to be joking. And I think that, we have to be kind of understanding of that and believe he is who he says he is. Political backlash. Advances in LGBT rights, such as legalization of same-sex marriage in 2015, have often been met with political backlash. Some politician groups are fear-mongering tactics to mobilize opposition, framing LGBT and rights as a threat to traditional values. Intersectionality. For LGBT individuals who are people of color, the challenges are compounded by intersecting forms of discrimination. This intersectionality can lead to even greater marginalization and fear. So I brought that out to bring this out to say that, again, 2 gay men gave me my start in medicine. And they couldn't help who they were. They were who they were. And I accepted them, and they accepted me being heterosexual. Sometimes it's about acceptance. Or not. Here's something really interesting. Stanford researchers mapped white-only properties. It was a stunning statement to the housing discrimination in the area. It's been was constitutionally unenforceable since 1948, said Mr. Ho. The William Benjamin Scott and Luna M. Scott, professor of law, director of RELAB, and senior. This is a statement that was going to allow the housing agreement. No part of said property shall be sold, let or leased or transferred or assigned to or occupied by any person not of the Caucasian race, or to be used by any other than a person of the Caucasian race. How about that? Sound clear, right? It says researchers at Stanford University and Princeton University were teamed up with the County of Salmon to attempt to map and redidact racial covenants around the county. That means that you could not live there if you were a certain color. So, racially restricted covenants are clauses in property deeds that ban individuals of particular race from buying a home. Despite the U.S. Supreme Court setting laws barring racial covenants, researchers say they persist in national property records. When Dan Ho purchased a home in Palo Alto, he had to sign papers that said that the property should not be used or occupied by any person of African, Japanese, or Chinese descent. And Mongolian, okay, except for the capacity of servant to a Caucasian. Results. The results show a distinct period on the use of racial covenants and geographical clustering. We estimate by 1950, 1 in 4 properties across the county were subject to racial covenants. So it's not that we didn't want to buy a house or couldn't afford a house, they would not rent to African Americans and any other group that they found disreputable. According to the figure below, the largest groups facing racial discrimination were by far Black and East Asian populations, other Asian groups coming in third. Researchers said Latino and European populations experience the least racial discrimination. The county of Santa Clara has been proactively going through the millions of documents to remove discriminating language from the property records. Says the operating office. This is where AI helped. They're cleaning it up and at less money. And this is the last piece, and it's on. This month is a breast cancer awareness month, and I want to get this out to my sister, as she was known. She was one of the people I started working with at West Open Health Center. She's a phlebotomist and just a light of life. And she died of breast cancer. And one of the discussions they talk about breast cancer is processed foods, processed ingredients, and ultra processed foods. Like fruits are great, nuts, eggs, you gotta watch the milk, and processes like stuff like pressed ham, all the cheap meats. So, and what I want to talk about is breast cancer. Again, it's diet, activity, genetics to kind of rule these things. But again, we can help ourselves by helping ourselves. It says the research on breast cancer among African American women has highlighted significant disparities, unique challenges. Here are some of the key points from the studies. Again, this is in respect for her and for the women that are dealing with breast cancer, African American women. Disparities in mortality rates. African American women are 41% more likely to die from breast cancer than their white female counterparts, despite having lower incidence rate. It means they get breast cancer less, but they're more likely, 40%, to die from it. This disparity is attributed to factors such as structural racism, socioeconomic status, and access to health care. 2. Aggressive cancer types. African American women are more likely to be diagnosed with aggressive subtype breast cancer, such as triple negative breast cancer and inflammatory breast cancer. These are harder to treat and have poor outcomes. 3. Younger age at diagnosis. We were talking about younger women, younger folks having diagnoses of cancer, and now realize that it's important because the mammogram screening starts at 40. So we're seeing younger women with breast cancer. So we have to be astute and say maybe this person needs a mammogram because of her family history and her weight and her chronic medical risk and family history. You have to think other stuff. There is an increasing trend of breast cancer diagnosis among younger African American women. This group is more likely to be diagnosed at a younger age and more advanced stages of cancer. Genetic and biological factors. Recent studies, including a landmark study by the National Cancer Institute (NCI), are investigating genetic and biological factors that contribute to breast cancer risk among African American women. These studies aim at identifying genetic markers that could help in the early detection of personalized treatment. Risk assessment. Researchers have developed new tools to estimate breast cancer risk specifically for African American women. These tools aim to be make more personalized decisions on when to begin breast cancer screening, especially for younger women. Ongoing research and advocacy. Organizations like the Breast Cancer Research Foundation are actively working to address these disparities through continued research and advocacy. Disparities like they just can't get a mammogram; they're too expensive. A lot of women can't afford them, and by the time they're able to afford and get them, the cancer is well advanced in them, and they've had problems with breast before. Just going to talk about it. Again, 40% of breast of cancer deaths can be prevented by doing 4 things, right? Stopping smoking, losing weight, increasing exercise, increasing activity. I again want to thank you for taking the time with me. Want to kind of understand that we got to get out there and vote. We have to support women and women of power positions because they're always under attack. Trump Price is under attack. Barbara Lee has always been under attack. The mayor of San Francisco is under attack. because there are women that have tried to make a difference. And whenever women try to make a difference, it's always an issue. Always an issue, particularly African American women and women of color. But there's a distinction. And you always have to understand the distinction. Um, Final note, I think that, again, I want to thank you for tuning in and sharing, and all the Facebook family. Appreciate you. Please watch the show. Again, parts are on YouTube. It's from Education of the Best Medicine. And my website is educationisthebestmedicine.com. Want to thank all the folks as we move to this holiday season. And just eat right, exercise, be kind to one another, and love on each other, please. Want to thank everybody for being who they are in my journey, helping me in my journey. Your support in my journey is really important. Uh, it's a transition, and these shows aren't easy to put together. I mean, you have to sit down and think about things and how they intersect in our world. And I just don't like just talking about facts, like the intersections of why we think the way we do. Why is there so much issue with Kamala Harris's leadership? Why is it that there's such discrimination going in the LGBT community? And I think that piece, I have to say, is that I was listening to Morning Joe, and one of the hosts, Ms. Fazinski, was asking the question of, I think, a young transgender lesbian female, and she had, if she was able to ask either presidential candidate what a question would be, and for Ms. Harris, she would have asked about approving the Equality Act, and for Mr. Trump, she would have asked, "Do let me see if I can phrase it." She said, she would ask him, does he think she is really human? So such is this young person, this young transgender LBGT person, thinking they are growing up in a world where they cannot be who they are. In fact, that was a discussion over in the school issue, the book, one of the books that brought us to Be Who You Are. You always tell people to be who they are, and when they are, you get pissed. They're to this, they're to that. I'm so what? So we have to be careful about what we ask for and what we're asking people to be. We're asking people to be inclusive, but we want to limit that inclusion to who we think it should be inclusive about. When I worked in the HIV epidemic, as I had to understand that men that loved men. No personal reflection on me. It was who they chose to love, who they were most comfortable with, who, as a friend would say, melted their butter. And we have to be okay with that. We have to be okay with that. I want to, again, thank you guys for listening. I want to thank my sister for her journey and struggle, and she did pass, but we want to keep her alive. And again, this breast cancer awareness month. Get your mammogram. The exams are good, but most women are going to benefit from mammograms. There are women with dense breasts that need to have special kind of studies now. We're learning that. We learn as we get more, again, individualizing care and therapy. We do different things. We don't do the same things, And I'm thankful to have turned 69, and I got my SSI. I said, wow, gee, been working that long. My dad, both the men in my life, both the dads in my life, Jimmy Lee Smith and James Pierce, you got to get up and go to work. Every day. Don't miss a day. And now I understand why. Because that's what happened in this system, in this society, in this country. Miss Howard will be with you next week. And I want to say, everyone have a great holiday, great week. Be careful, be safe out there. Be nice to one another, and loving one another.